I'm going to make a long story short today. And you know, I met Baba with my family in 1952. And what I think you want to hear about is 1956, since this is the anniversary of Baba's visit here. And so when the time was coming for Baba's 1956 visit to the United States, everyone heard about this, and we saved our money so that we could afford to travel with Baba. And anybody who wanted to was welcome to travel with Baba. Can you imagine that? The plane would be over, there'd be several planes full now. So we saved our money and we got time off from our job. And the day came and we traveled down to New York to see Baba in 1956. And we went out there to greet Baba at the airport. A huge crowd of people came, and many of them had never met Baba before. And when Baba came down on the tarmac, we were out by the fence and waving. He spotted us and he waved like that. And that was the first thrill of seeing Baba again since 1952. So we were overjoyed, as usual, to be with Baba. And when he came out from customs and saw the people there, he greeted each person, and people introduced their friend or their relative who hadn't met Baba. And he touched her, embraced her, somehow made a contact with everyone. And then Baba stayed in New York in the Delmonico Hotel. And when he got in the can you hear me all right? Is this still working? Yes. When he got in the car, they rolled down the cover of the convertible so everyone could see him. There are some nice pictures of Baba taken at that scene. And our family bundled into a taxi. And the timing just happened that we were driving along the street and we looked out and there's Baba's car right next to us. And we all went like that to Baba and he just waved back. And our taxi driver caught on and he kept neck and neck with the car. And we kept on waving, and finally he said, well, Baba's probably had enough of this. And so we managed to get to the hotel before Baba did and got out on the sidewalk so we could greet Baba once again as he disembarked from the car and entered the hotel. And because we had learned from 1952 that you don't miss one single chance to see Baba, to be with him, to catch a glimpse of him. And one of the things he said in 1952 was, keep your eyes on me all the time, because while you're looking away, it might be the time I'm looking at you, and you'd miss out. And so some of us paid a lot of attention to that, and we didn't want to miss that gaze of his, because he could look at you and just waves of love would pour on you, and naturally you wouldn't want to miss that. So I won't go into all of the New York scene because I want to come right up to MeherMount, to Los Angeles first. And after Baba spent time in New York City, and all of us went with Baba to Myrtle Beach, and we spent time with Baba there. And Baba saw many, many people at the center in Myrtle Beach. Then we began the tour across the states, first by going up to Washington, D.C. with Baba. And Baba went over to see the Sufi Center, and the rest of us, most of the rest of us were on a bus, and we were given a tour of Arlington Cemetery, which had Baba's own significance, of course. But then that evening we boarded the airplane from Washington, D.C. to go across the United States to Los Angeles. And there we were on the same plane with Baba. Airplane, that is. And it was just wonderful to be all night, spend the whole night with Baba that way. And my father, who was sitting near Baba, said that Baba didn't sleep at all. Not at all. And Baba did get off the plane in Dallas, which is significant. None of the rest of us did. We were told to stay on board. And then we proceeded and landed in LA in the morning. And Marguerite was there to greet us. Hilda and the other ladies were there to greet us, to greet Baba. They were the welcoming committee. And of course Baba stayed at the Hollywood Roosevelt, and interviews were set up. And this was the time for the Los Angeles people. And many, many people came, and even off the street, reading about Baba in the newspaper or some other connection, people would come to see Baba. And the rest of us didn't have the private times with Baba that we had had previously in New York and at the center. We had personal time, private time with Baba. And in Los Angeles, none of us complained that we were missing out on that. We tried to be as close to the reception room as possible, and every time Baba went hither and yon, we were always there to see him. And we had our posts of doing whatever duties that were given to us, but Baba took note of this, and he said he wanted to give us time with him, and that would be coming up to MeherMount here at Ojai. And so the bus, Baba came up here by car, and the rest of us came by bus up that winding road. And it was a day very much like today. And in fact, I looked up the original itinerary, and it was literally August 2nd that Baba was here in 1956. And so the day was cloudy, or more accurately, foggy. And you couldn't see, it wasn't clear. It was like it was here this morning earlier, cool, and you couldn't see out across the vistas. And Baba would call Fred Winterfeld over, and he'd say, he'd gesture like that, how come it's like, the weather's like this? It's up to you to clear this off now before the end of the day so we can look out. And Fred's going, what, me? And several times through the day, Baba teased him that way. He'd bring him over and he'd say, how come you haven't done it yet? And it made a nice moment for some fun and more intimacy with Fred and the rest of us. And in the room there of the house, Baba had us gathered around him in the room, and he was having fun with trying on the hats. And then after a while he said, now I want you all to be quiet, to close your eyes and be silent. And of course many people were thinking, oh, this is some special significant moment, some spiritual happening and so on. And after a while Baba snapped his fingers and we all came to, and he said, did you hear it? And we were going, what? And he said, my stomach. Dana gave me so many grapes, my stomach is grumbling. He wanted to share that with us. And so he was just amusing us in these ways. And then he said, in 700 years there won't be any more grapes. And he said he liked MeherMount very much, and that he had been here before, and he asked different people how do you like MeherMount? And he asked my mother, and she said, instant appeal, Baba. And he acted like he was trying to get her to remember it. And then that's when he said that he had been here before. And of course it's a very beautiful place. It's still very, very beautiful. And Baba walked all over all the grounds here, so that all of MeherMount is a very sacred place. It still carries Baba's wonderful, loving presence. While we were still gathered there in the room with Baba, he said, now I want you all to go out and walk along the grounds here and see me in nature. Take me with you. See me in nature. And all of creation came out of me. And so that's what we did. And I was walking up there by the house, and I was looking out across the valley, and I was thinking about Baba. And just then I was feeling the presence of someone next to me, and I turned, and to my delight and surprise, it was Baba. And I felt that he kind of snuck up on me and shared that moment, and he was sort of telling me that he was with me as I was seeing him in nature. And then he turned around and went on. And you've all heard those stories of how quickly Baba walked. You would almost have to run. and yet he was so graceful, the way he would glide. He never looked like he was walking fast. If we were keeping up with him, we would be going like this and looking very ungainly to keep up with him, but he glided as though he were going in slow motion. And with this grace, and across these rough fields he walked that way, and we followed him around. We walked around that whole sulfur pool. Baba examined that carefully, and we were going and so, but it was just a delight to walk around with Baba. And my mother, on her stroll around before Baba came out, she went over to that big tree there that stretches out with a big canopy, and she was thinking to herself, Baba would really look wonderful under that tree. I would like to see Baba sitting under that tree. She was just thinking it. And then she turned around and saw Baba coming with the whole entourage of all of us galloping behind her, behind Baba. And he was heading for where she was, to the tree. And he went right over to the tree and sat down. And all the people gathered around him, and she couldn't see him sitting under the tree. But nevertheless, he did that. But he stayed there and had the people leave while he stayed under the tree. And she knew why, because then she could get to see him sitting under the tree alone. And so she waited and stayed for that, and he got up and he came over to her and kissed her on the cheek. And she felt it was, Baba was saying that he understood how her wish to see him sit there, and he gave her that boon. He knows our thoughts, our most intimate thoughts, even now. And even now, we have only to wish something like that, and it's granted. We don't know how lucky we are. So many of our wishes really are granted. If our heart is in the right place, he gives us our heart's desire. He always does. It's always been my experience. We just don't know enough to concentrate on our heart's desire. But he always acknowledges it, always. And he has some intimate way of letting you know that he's granting that secret wish, and that he's with you and he hears you. So he's here for us now, all the time. So when Baba kissed my mother under the tree there, she was in such ecstasy, she couldn't move. She just sat there. I mean, what else was there to do? There was nothing more that she could ever want to do but sit there and enjoy that bliss state. Pure bliss. And it seemed like a long time had elapsed, and indeed it had. Because in the meantime, she missed out on lunch. And up there where we were having lunch, around where this new building is, there was a big long table spread out with all kinds of food, and we all had our buffet lunch there. And by the time she came to, so to speak, and realized she better get with it, she got up there, and there was only an old crust of bread. And then she realized that maybe she should eat something. She ate that, and she reported that it tasted like manna from heaven. It was so good, and that was her whole lunch. And while Baba was here, I remember Agnes having told us that he took her arm in arm and strolled around all the grounds with her, and he acted like a real estate agent with her, very practical. And he said, now, who lives over there, and what do they do, and who owns that piece of property over there? And he inquired about every detail of the property and everybody around the whole area. And Agnes enjoyed that immensely, to show everything off to Baba. So we had this absolutely delightful afternoon here, the late morning and afternoon. And indeed, by this time in the afternoon, the fog cleared off and you could see more. of the area. But Baba didn't stay too long after lunch, and then he left. He went back by car, and we lingered on for a little while before we made the long journey back to LA. But to me, it's a very memorable and special time we spent with Baba here on these wonderful grounds where he walked all over here. And so we went back to LA, and the next day, on the 3rd of August, in the morning, around 9:30, we all got on the airplane to go up to San Francisco. And, you know, riding on airplanes was new to a lot of people then. There weren't any jets, it was propeller and all that. And my sister and I were sitting more toward the back of the airplane, and Baba was sitting on the right toward the front. And I was thinking, oh, I can't look out the window and amuse myself that way, because it would have been interesting. And I thought, well, Baba's right here. I should be feeling Baba's love and loving Baba. And then it's like checking your pulse. I was thinking, that's not happening, and I can't manufacture that wonderful feeling of loving Baba, and it's just not there. I was dry bones. And it's like, what do you do? And but I wanted to feel Baba's love, and I wanted to be loving him. And just at that instant, Baba gave me the answer. He prompted my mother to ask me to go up to my father, who was sitting in front of Baba, to get the camera. And so I said, okay, because I knew I could go by, and I was planning to sneak a look at Baba, and I thought, well, this is exactly what I wanted to do. So I got the camera, and Baba was sitting next to the window here, and he was ready for me. And he leaned over like that, and he just looked right up with those huge, big brown eyes, and he just gave me that love glance, and it was so big and so full. I just went back to my seat, and I was in heaven all the way to San Francisco. I mean, time doesn't exist when that happens. It's an eternity. It's so beautiful. And then you may have seen the old calendar where it shows the photograph of Baba coming along the hallway in the San Francisco airport. Adele is there, Billy's there, Phyllis and Kitty behind Baba. And I remember how I felt being behind Baba as he approached all these people who were eager to meet him, and I knew what they were going to feel, and I could just sense this excitement in them. And I had my own excitement because I was so happy for all these people for what they were about to receive, the happiness, and that I could be a part of this whole thing, this whole greeting that Baba was giving to them. And that was sort of another side of the whole picture of being with Baba, to be with him when he's giving his love out to all these people, and watching their faces and that love flow from Baba to all these people. It was so wonderful. And so we had our times there in San Francisco at the Holiday Lodge. And it's more or less set out in a compound courtyard. And Baba was giving interviews in an adjacent large room. Everything was set up and nicely decorated for all the interviews there. But he was originally placed, instead of in one of the rooms surrounding the courtyard, he was originally placed in an apartment-style room behind the courtyard. And so was our family, in another apartment-style place. Well, Baba was very unhappy with this situation and where he was placed, because he wanted to be among his lovers there in the motel. So he asked to be changed, and so he moved over to this room at the end, on the third floor, and he occupied that room. And he was still not happy with that room, and so he changed over to a room that was second floor, more centrally located. And in the meantime, our family was brought round from where we had been, and we occupied the room, the third floor room over here that Baba had just vacated. How sweet. And we of course, we enjoyed that. And it's funny how even now you think about it, we were very polite to Baba in certain respects. We allowed his distance, and we didn't do what we saw the children doing. And now I don't know if I could restrain myself. You wanted to run up and hug him all the time, and that's what the children were doing. But when we saw Baba was busy talking with this one and that one, we didn't do that. We respected their privacy, and we didn't run up like that to Baba. And Baba, again, was having all these private interviews, so we didn't see him so much during the day. And one afternoon, my father and I crossed the courtyard and met each other, and we decided to go to the adjoining restaurant to have tea, which wasn't our custom to do. But there we were, the two of us in the restaurant, about to begin a tea, and all of a sudden the call came out, Baba wants the Shaw family, come up to his room. And so we dashed off, and we all gathered at Baba's room there, and sat on this couch here, and there's Baba sitting there, and all of a sudden we're being served tea. So we had this delightful tea party with Baba. And Baba poured the tea in his saucer, and he sipped it like that. And it was a very, very intimate moment. But there are other stories that go with that I don't have time to tell, and I've told you before. But those were precious moments. There was another short one. Kitty found my father and my sister together, and they were sitting down in some room or something. They didn't seem to be doing anything. And she said, "What are you doing here?" And they said, "We're becoming the dust at Baba's feet." Which is true. Baba's making that happen, whether we want it or not. Yeah. But while we were in, lots of things happened in San Francisco, but one of the interesting things was that Baba decided we would all have a free day, and I think that's when he visited the Sufis, and we had this free day. And B. Dimple offered to take our family over to Muir Woods for that day. And so we piled into her car and drove down all these winding roads and got car sick. Well, not seriously. Anyway, we went and she toured us around Muir Woods. It was a delightful place, as some of you know. And there was this huge redwood tree that we saw, and my mother exclaimed over it. She was so impressed with this tree. Yet again, this tree. And she just loved it. And after we got back from Muir Woods, first of all, we saw Baba in the car. He was just coming back or going somewhere, and he called us over to the car and had us lean in to the back seat to get an embrace. And as I leaned in, he reached up like that, and he pinched my face like that till my cheeks hurt. And I don't know why, but he seemed to enjoy doing that. And it was wonderful, though, really. And so then he called our family in to his room, and he said, "So what did you do? How did you spend the day?" And my mother, in her exuberant way, said, "Oh, Baba, we went to Muir Woods, and we saw this wonderful ancient tree. And when I saw this ancient tree, I thought, oh, wouldn't it be nice if the Ancient One sat under the ancient tree?" Why wouldn't she had this thing about trees and seeing Baba under a tree? Why wouldn't she say it? And so that was that. And Baba nodded, and so that was that. So the next day, wouldn't you know it, we're all going down to Muir Woods, the whole party. a bus was arranged for everyone, and Baba went by car, and we toured around. It was paved walkway all the way around, and guess where the destination was? It was that ancient tree. And Baba sat under that big tree. It was bigger than that tree, twice as big. And Baba sat under there, and the way the sun was shining on him, and he closed his eyes, he looked like the Buddha when he sat under that ancient tree. And that seemed to be his purpose, was to go and sit under that tree. And then, of course, the children took full advantage of this opportunity to be with Baba, and they were swinging arm in arm like that with Baba, skipping and playing with Baba as we walked all the way back. And we had this another intimate outing in a childlike, playful way of being with Baba in San Francisco. So that's my allotted time. But if you have some questions, maybe there's a few minutes for questions.
Oh, great then. Can you tell about looking into Baba's eyes?
Okay, what'd you say?
I said, how old were you then?
In 56, I was 22. Rosalie asked me to tell the story. She knows all my stories. They must have a number for the story. She asked for the one of looking into Baba's eyes. Do you have the time for another? This was in 1952 in Myrtle Beach after meeting Baba. It was probably the second interview in the lagoon cabin. And when we each came, our family always came together to be with Baba. When we were called into the lagoon cabin. And each time Baba would stand and embrace us. And after the interview was over, he would stand and embrace us again. That wonderful heavenly embrace where his body feels like a body and yet not like a body. And it smells like these gardenias, or indescribable perfume, so light and airy. Well, when Baba was going to embrace me, he held me in such a way that I could look into his eye, his right eye. And at that split second, I knew that I could really look at Baba. And I had to make a decision whether to look away in fright for what I might see. And it may have taken many lifetimes to develop the capacity to be so daring. Because I knew in that instant that in order to really look into Baba's eyes, I had to let go of all of me, everything I know about myself, all of my attachment, all of my security. And I was only 18 years old. I had to let go of all sorts of security, my parents, everything I knew, in order to be able to look into Baba's eyes. And later on I described it like a scene out of our earlier life when we used to go up north in New York State, go swimming, and we'd find a tree that had a rope attached to it, and on a high bluff you could swing out like Tarzan across the lake. And when you get out there, you had to let go. There's no going back. And when you get out there, you're scared, but you have to let go. And this was an experience in a similar sense that letting go is a must. There's no going back. And so in this split second, all that happened inside me, and I took that daring leap, and I looked into Baba's eye. And you know, with most people, if you take a penetrating look into them, there's a stopping point, and you have a contact with that person. But with Baba, I looked, and there's no stopping point. I just kept on looking and looking, and there was no end to seeing into Baba. And what I saw was pure light, limitless. There's no edges, no end to it. It was boundless, pure, brilliant light, and it was beauty. It was pure beauty. And I was swimming in it. I was part of it. And it seemed like an eternity, like nothing existed. And it was so happy to be in that pure light. It could have taken only a second in our time. And then the embrace was over and everything was natural and normal. And Baba embraced the next member of the family, and I never thought anything of it except that this was this intimate moment I had with Baba, and this glimpse that he gave me of knowing a little bit more about him, who he is, and knowing that he is this great light, this limited, unlimited, infinite light, and experiencing some small measure of that. That was his gift. But it's so normal and so natural.
I thought you were making fruit salad for Baba in Mercedes.
Can't hear you.
Fruit salad for Baba.
Well, there, I think we're going to get past into more time. I don't know if we have that time. I mean, what's your schedule here?
We have about 5 minutes.
5 minutes? And she wants to hear about the foods. I bet she could tell it herself. In New York City, after Baba's accident, well, that's kind of well, anyway, after Baba's accident, his teeth were knocked out. And he was in this room with, and it was sweltering hot in Mrs. Zeus's apartment where he was giving interviews. And they didn't have air conditioning, and his leg was in the cast, his left leg, and they had a tub with a cake of ice and a fan behind it blowing this cold water from the ice over him to cool him. And then Baba called my sister Renee into the room, and we were asked if we would make a fruit salad for him. And then Baba motioned to me like that, and to come forward next to him, and so I stood next to his shoulder like that, and Baba looked up to me like that, and he held up his board, and I got the idea he wanted me to read the board, and he spelled out these letters, and I blinked, and he looked up at me, and I go, oh my gosh, I thought, what did he say? And all I got was that it was 4 letters, and I was so embarrassed because I couldn't read a thing. And I said, I don't know, Baba. And he goes, all right, we'll do it again. And he looks patiently, and I really concentrated, and he did the 4 letters again, more slowly. I concentrated, and he looked up, and by that time, I was chagrined again because I'd only gotten 2 letters. And so he went like that, okay, we'll do it again. And I thought, oh my gosh, I really have to get it this time, the 3rd time. And I concentrated on getting the last 2 letters. And then he looks up and he like, did you get it? And I said, oh, soft. The word was soft. And he went like this, and he meant mush the salad so it was very soft. Mush it in your hands. And so this huge bowl was placed on the kitchen table in this small tiny kitchen, and it was so hot, but I never knew it was hot because I was so concentrated on Baba, and my sister and I were so overjoyed to be asked to do something for Baba that our tears salted the salad. We couldn't stop crying into it, and my sister would remind me, mush it, Leatrice, mush it. And every kind of fruit was there, and later on, and so Baba was served that fruit salad, and later on Renee heard that Baba did like the salad very much because he couldn't chew anything. So that made us very happy. It made us happy to make Baba happy. Jai Baba. I'm very, very happy to be here with you to share.